All right, guys, I know it's been a minute. Welcome back. I'm glad to be back. But last month, I was busy putting out the docuseries that my production company was doing. And my production company is called Rose Noir Media, and the docuseries that we put out is called Stories in Color. And it's basically just a docuseries highlighting the people behind the scenes, highlighting Black stories, Black positive stories. So if you guys want to check it out, the link is in my bio. And it's only 4 episodes. They're not very long. They're all less than 30 minutes. So please check it out if you have time. But now I'm back. I can continue to put out more content, and we're back to regularly scheduled programming. So let's get into this next video. As someone who has had plenty of family members serve, a brother who just got back from deployment, and as someone who wanted to serve but couldn't, I have tremendous respect for our armed forces and the men and women who keep us free. The man I'm going to be discussing today is an American hero who I unfortunately just found out about. Nicholas Irving was born on November 28, 1986 in Augsburg, Germany. During his service, he was an assaulter, machine gunner, designated marksman, and sniper. Not much is known about his early life, but he was born to parents who both served in the Army doing counterintelligence during the Cold War. He grew up Christian and remembers being in church every Sunday, but he didn't really like it. He wanted to be like his dad and join the military. However, he didn't feel he was smart enough to follow in his parents' footsteps doing counterintelligence. He just knew that he wanted to serve and wanted to originally become a Navy SEAL, often preparing by going for runs at the beach, swimming 1 to 2 miles a day, had a former Green Beret train him on how to properly swim, and got scuba certified at 15. He graduated high school with a 1.7 GPA. Now, he was bullied all throughout high school, so that may have played a part in his low GPA, as being bullied can cause lots of mental health issues, and he himself said that he felt that he was bullied enough, and being a nerd would have made the bullying worse. He admitted that he could have done better in school, but chose not to. He had anger issues and considered himself to be a hothead, often getting into fights that resulted in suspension and lots of disciplinary action from his parents from hanging around the wrong crowd. He did vow after school that he would never be bullied again at 18 after joining the Army, because he wasn't allowed to join the SEALs because he was colorblind, and he also barely passed the ASVAB. An Army nurse and recruiter heard him crying because at the time he felt his dreams were shattered and felt he couldn't get into college with his low GPA. They introduced him to the Army Rangers and told him it was basically the SEALs without the swimming. He was convinced and signed up and passed the test with the help of the nurse who helped him cheat, and was on the way to Fort Benning, Georgia 2 weeks later. Now, joining the Rangers is not an easy process, and he said that when he started, there were over 80 guys in the class, and only 6 made it to the end. And there was someone that came over and graduated with them, so only 7 total. He stated that what kept him going was being embarrassed to quit after saying he would become a Navy SEAL his whole life. He was motivated by seeing people quit and used that as fuel to do better. And he felt that he was just too dumb to quit, and this was his only option. After graduating, he went to the 3rd Ranger Battalion, where he did 2 years there, and then went to Ranger School for 62 days. Went to Sniper School, and the list goes on. He does explain the process about 12 minutes into his first interview with Vlad TV, so if you're interested in joining the Rangers, you can watch him explain the process there. I linked the interview in the description. However, it is 2 hours long, so just get you a snack or something and be prepared to sit for a while. Let's get into how this man who weighed less than 100 pounds in high school became a sniper with 33 confirmed kills. Before we get into his deployment, anyone who is thinking about joining the armed forces, pay attention here. Military service is romanticized throughout many cultures. It is one of the highest honors anyone can do, but soldiers don't come back with trauma for no reason if they make it back at all. With that being said, we're going to talk about his military service, how it affected him, and what he feels is needed to be an effective soldier. He is very adamant that mindset is the number one thing that you need. He recalls going through selection, which he says is the Ranger equivalent to the Navy SEALs' Hell Week, with 2 fractured tibias and fibias, but he kept going. He also said he woke up one day and his calves and shins were swollen up so big that he couldn't see his feet, but it didn't stop him. He stresses that mindset is what will keep you going during moments where you're fighting for your life. He remembered that during a gunfight, one of the Rangers curled up at his feet in the middle of the fight and was too scared to do anything. Even with all that training, he didn't have what was needed to make it through. His mind wasn't strong enough. In situations like those, your will to live has to outweigh your fear. So strengthen your mind and your resolve to live. During his first deployment, he thought it was going to be like Saving Private Ryan, but when he got there, he was inside the wire. So it was peaceful. There was coffee shops, restaurants, and there was nothing really going on until nightfall when he got into his first firefight after only being there for 8 hours. Even though it was his first fight, that wasn't the first time he unalived someone. The first time was when he was operating a machine gun on the way back to their compound. He was told that if a car started swerving towards them to take it out. Sure enough, somewhere along the ride, a car swerved towards him. He said at first he didn't do anything. He said he was in disbelief that the car was coming towards them, so he didn't take a shot. His commander had to hit him on the head and made him snap back into reality. That's when he started firing and took his first life. He recalls being indifferent and not feeling anything when it first happened. He said it was just weird. Upon checking the car, they discovered that it was filled with a bunch of homemade explosives. Also, during that particular deployment, they did 120 missions in 90 days, sometimes doing 2 to 3 in a single day with no days off, unaliving more than 10 people himself during that time. He says that the guns are so powerful that even if a bullet doesn't hit you, it still takes off a limb. Recalling that a machine gunner behind him hit a running guy on a roof that had an RPG in, and he said the guy's top half completely flew away and his legs ran for 2 more steps before collapsing. So just insane stuff that we can't even begin to fathom. And one of the interesting things he said was that your training goes out the window when someone is shooting at you. So he feels that the ones who take action are naturally born to handle that task. And he also warns that it can be addictive. The rush, the unaliving, it's like a drug, and a drug that doesn't feel like any other in the world. As I mentioned earlier, starting out, he wasn't a sniper. The process for that, at least in the Rangers, I'm not sure about anywhere else, you don't start off as a sniper. You have to put in some time on the line or in the field to see if you can be a team player and can perform under stressful conditions. He then went to Ranger School, which is the toughest school in the American military. It's a 62-day training course. He extended his stay and failed his first evolution or first phase. He was going to quit because he wanted to get married and he had to be out of school for that to happen. He ended up extending his stay and was there for close to 80 or 90 days. After getting out, he was malnourished. His nails didn't grow for months. He couldn't feel the tips of his toes for about a year, but he was then sent to Iraq for his 3rd deployment in 2008. After getting back from the deployment, he went to sniper school at Fort Benning. It was 8 weeks with a 70% dropout or failure rate. Now, sniper school isn't about the shooting because at this point, you should already be a pretty good shot. It's about the other aspects. Math, how to calculate wind, the scope on your rifle, and stalking. The stalking portion is what caused most of the failure rate. The concept of stalking is learning how to blend in with your surroundings in order to sneak in an area and get the job done. For the first part of the test, you're going up against your highly trained instructors and you're tasked with getting within 300 meters of their position, identifying where they're at, making a mock shot after identifying them, and then getting back out of that 300-meter position unseen. There is a whole process to the test, but I'm not going to get into that entire thing in this video. But he did say people fail that portion because they weren't stealthy enough to get in and out without being seen, or they just simply put themselves in a position where they couldn't shoot because the sun was in their eyes. So people failed for what he said was a simple task. His longest range for hitting a live target was half a mile, which doesn't seem hard, but it is when you factor in all that it takes to take a shot that hits your target. So Irving had 33 confirmed kills, but people also don't know what that means. Confirmed kills means they go out and identify the body. That doesn't mean that he only took 33 shots or unalived only 33 people. He recalls plenty of times where he took shots, saw the evidence of a lack of life, but no body. The enemies would carry the bodies and hide them to take away the kill count from the Americans as to not have an accurate number count. His 33 confirmed kills was within a 4-month period, and he recalls unaliving 5 guys in a night and helping to call drop bombs on 5 more guys within that same night. One of the days there, he spoke to a woman who made him realize that his enemies were people with souls. Before that, he didn't really see them as human beings. He also recalls being overrun by an entire village of a few hundred people with only a small team and having to fight their way out, leaving with about 6 bullets after going in with 210. During one of his deployments, an assaulter came up to him and said, "Dude, you're like the angel of death, the Grim Reaper." His spotter at the time was an older guy who was in the Blue Oyster Cult and loved the song Don't Fear the Reaper and loved the name saying, "Nah, I don't fear the Reaper." So that is how he got his nickname, the Reaper. I'm taking it back to his first kill here. He said that when they opened the car door, the man spilled out like jello. Remember how I said he felt nothing after it happened? Well, that was only directly after it happened. Later that night, he said he dreamed about the guy. The man became the ceiling fan in his room with the arms and legs as blades and his head being the center portion where the lights are. During this time, Irving said he couldn't move as he was strapped to the bed. Well, felt he was strapped to the bed. The fan started spinning faster and faster until his body ripped apart and blew up all over the room, dousing him in the guy's blood. That's when he woke up, and he said he didn't do anything but go to his next mission. He doesn't know how he functioned during this time, and he said that it didn't feel real for most of it. For him, his mind came up with different ways to protect itself during the moment. For example, the first person he unalived via sniper fell off a roof and landed right in front of him. His mind compartmentalized it as a bag of potatoes in a burlap bag to protect him. He said he never really registered anything until later. It was just a constant state of confusion at first, and you have to disassociate to cope. He has regrets because of his sanity. He had dealt with a lot of it by being intoxicated, which is what a lot of soldiers do. They would party for 2 to 3 days straight after a deployment to help them forget. But he would also drink from the time he woke up to the time he went to sleep. His mind would be on the field during conversations while being at home with his wife. And he didn't like being home and felt more comfortable being at war. He said being home was more stressful because now he had to worry about so much dealing with life and not having control over any of the variables. Being overseas, the only thing he had to worry about was being alive. He felt he had more control in war versus regular life. He also speaks about losing his faith after getting back from his last deployment. He said that what he saw overseas killed the belief, and also the constant calls informing him of suicide from the people he served with. It sent him on the path of searching different religions to see what he wanted to believe in, saying he even looked into witchcraft but determined that it wasn't for him. He got back into faith after the birth of his son and eventually became a Rasta. That allowed him to rebuild his faith and made him love life, now being afraid to die because of his family, whereas before he didn't care about dying at all. Over time, he changed. He preferred sniping when he was younger. He loved it being him and the target, but now he prefers machine gunner because of the separation from the target, which to me symbolizing him wanting to separate himself from war. So you can see how over time the gravity of what he did took a hold of him. Him having children probably made him fully grasp the concept of life, which happens to most of us. I do want to shout out his wife for being patient. He himself said that he wouldn't have wanted to date him when he was an alcoholic, but she stuck by his side. She understood that he was dealing with something that most never would. He was able to get himself back healthy when it came to his drinking and got himself a new normal where he's as sane mentally as he can be. A lot of times, soldiers don't get to talk about things when they're in the thick of war. So by the time they come home, a lot of issues have taken root and it's difficult to come back from it, especially because they can't really talk about it with their loved ones. Not only because they most likely aren't allowed to, but I'm sure they also don't want to scar you with their trauma as well. So don't pressure them. Just let them know that you're there. And I know that we want to take on the pain of our loved ones, but these are people who've been trained not to speak. So don't force them. They have to have time to adjust to their new normal. Even in our wildest dreams, we will never be able to imagine what war is, even with Call of Duty. Again, support, don't push. Huge shout out and thank you to the men and women who serve. You are appreciated. Thank you.